is the Hour of Revival radio service presenting Revive Your Heart with Eric Hutchins for Monday, 8th of December.
Wonderful memories that melody brings back. Because Myrddin Lewis, whom we remember especially this week, always used to sing that in all our rallies and crusades. With the words, "Be still my soul." He's now with the Lord, having recently been called home. When he was last in Eastbourne, he came along to our studios, and we plan to share with you some of the outstanding incidents of his life. We replay some of the things we took down when he was last with us. Myrddin Lewis has had a varied career. He's been in light opera, in musical shows. He's sung before royalty. He's been in the Welsh Revival. He came to be with us in the largest evangelistic rally that we ever had in Britain years ago in Bellevue Gardens. And he has seen the hand of the Lord in his own preaching ministry, in and out of churches, in crusade, and on the move. We don't know quite where to begin, so let's begin at the beginning, Myrddin. Where were you when you were saved, and how? How old were you?
If my memory serves me right, I was about 15 years of age, living in West Wales in the Almond Valley, some 20 miles from Swansea. I had an accident to a finger of mine. It's still a crooked finger, but that finger was the reason why I found myself in a gospel hall. David Matthews, the Welsh revivalist, and he was the preacher. And at the close of the service, I went forward.
You mean he actually asked you to get out of your seat and go to the front of the gospel hall?
Well, he didn't actually ask me to get out of the seat. He got a hold of me as I was leaving the hall.
Oh, I see. He actually buttonholed you.
And buttonholed me. He put his arms around my shoulders, and while my head was looking towards the ground, he very carefully twisted me around, and instead of going outwards, I found myself walking inwards towards the front of the hall, where he got me on my knees and led me to the Saviour.
You are aware that with modern reports and ideas, that's not the way to do it, they say, but it's the way that was satisfactory in your case.
Well, it matters not to me what they say or what anybody says. It's what's happened that matters, and I know what happens. I was there.
Well, that's right. So you were saved at 15 years of age. Then you went to work in the mines.
Yes, sir. I was working in the mines at that time. I started working in the mines at the age of 14. And I was in the mines until I was 24 before I left.
And at what time did you come to enter what we would commonly call show business, musical comedies and the like?
That would be around about the year 1926. I had a dispute with the management in the colliery, which I won't go into now, but it upset me greatly. And at that very moment, I was approached by a theatrical agent and offered a contract to enter into a profession as a professional singer, which at that time I was glad to take hold of.
You really could sing.
I could
good
in those days, yes.
The Lord gave you a wonderful voice.
Why did they nail him to Calvary's tree? Why, tell me why was he there? Jesus, the helper, the healer, the friend. Why, tell me why was he there? All my iniquities on him were laid. He nailed them all to the tree. Jesus was a man as a nice sinfully paid, and he paid the ransom for me.
We are continuing the Myrddin Lewis Memorial Week. He came to our studios and shared with us how the Lord had undertaken for him through his long life, just a few years before his recent home call. We are replaying what was then recorded, and I have just asked him at that time when he came into show business.
That would be around about the year 1926. I had a dispute with the management in the colliery, which I won't go into now, but it upset me greatly. And at that very moment, I was approached by a theatrical agent and offered a contract to enter into the profession as a professional singer, which at that time I was glad to take hold of.
You really could sing. You always could.
In those days, yes.
The Lord gave you a wonderful voice. So you got into musical comedies and shows. Can you remember any of the titles?
Well, there was one particular show that had quite a long run. It was called What'll I Do? And,
very appropriate question, isn't it? You can end every gospel service
yes, it was. Yes,
what
it was.
will I do?
Yes,
that was the title of the show.
Yes.
You sang in that?
Yes, and then too, there were what they call Sunday concerts, very much in the vogue in those days. And I do recall being in a Sunday concert, and at the Lyceum Theatre in Sheffield, I had none other than the lovely Gracie Fields there also as one of the artists.
Right.
I was very, very proud.
You were on the same bill as Gracie Fields?
Well, yes, in a way, yes, the same bill, but this was just a concert,
I see.
Sunday afternoon concert for some cause or other.
I see.
And we gave our services free, but Grace, at that time,
yes.
she was very, very on the up and going.
I should imagine, very all the way from Rochdale and you from Wales.
That's right.
Well, now, any other famous artists you performed with?
Well, Eric, you must forgive me. It's a long time ago, and I really forget the names of them.
Must have forgotten them anyway.
Yeah. In any case, they'd be names that wouldn't be known today. I remember George Roby, for instance. I was with him on a bill on another occasion.
Were you?
On the music hall. Yeah. He was a comedian. And
you're a bit of one of yourself, actually, but still go on.
And I forget the name of the Scotsman. There was not Lauder, not Harry Lauder. Although I played in the same theatres that Harry Lauder played in, I'm afraid my memory will not serve me very well.
Well, we don't want to dig up that memory, but you did in fact have a day when you found yourself singing to the then Duke and Duchess of York, and later to become King George VI and the Queen of England, at the Wembley Festival.
That's right.
Now, tell me something about that. What were you singing then?
That was the Wembley Festival, where they had a week given over to Welsh music and singing. And there were, I think, if I remember rightly, there were 8 artists chosen from Wales, and I was fortunate to be one of the 8. And there were 6 choirs that came up from Wales to London, to the exhibition. And it so happened that whereas we all knew that royalty would be in attendance at one or other of the concerts, it so happened that it came on the concert that I was singing in. And I sang in the oratorio, The Ark of the Covenant by David Stein.
In these worldly days, you seem to choose remarkable titles, like What Shall I Do? And The Ark of the Covenant. It seems that the way was getting ready to lead you out of show business. So that's our next question. How did you get out of it? Well, that's the question he's going to answer tomorrow morning.
Broadcasting in the 41-meter band shortwave.
This is the Hour of Revival radio service, presenting Revive Your Hearts with Eric Hutchins for December, Wednesday the 10th.
Once again, we're continuing the Myrddin Lewis Memorial Series. As I've already explained, about 2 years ago he came to our studios and told us his life story. And we are replaying some excerpts. Today, he answers the question I asked yesterday. How did you get out of show business?
My mother, of whom I have a great love, and she was a very, very wonderful saint of God. She hated every minute of my life in the theatrical business. I recall the first time I went home to visit with her, and she just looked me up and down. She said, "You've gone even to look like the old stage." She did not like it. And I always had that something in my mind that I would quit the show business for mother's sake. But I didn't. And so God took my mother. And when he took my mother, that finished me.
It broke you up.
That broke me up entirely. He took my mother, and within 3 months, I'd quit it. I left it.
And never went back?
And I never went back.
And altogether you'd been in show business how long?
6 years.
6 years?
Yes.
Then you gave your voice exclusively to singing the gospel.
Yes, it was an amazing thing. I got right with God. I use that term because I was a backslider. And I got right with God in a little international holiness mission on Battersea Rise in London, where I went in and made my peace with God And this was really a miracle, because unknown to me, my wife was attending that mission. I was a theatrical. I had no time for any missions.
Mhm.
And on this particular Saturday night, I went in and I saw a little card that said prayer meeting upstairs. And I went upstairs and I joined 12 people up there. I was a complete stranger to them. And the little man, Mr. Ching by name, he warmly welcomed me, went straight to the front and said to his fellow believers, well, we'll dispense with the usual, let's go to prayer immediately. And they all got on their knees, and of course I got on my knees, and I was in a very broken state of mind. In fact, I was in a dreadful state. And I immediately began to cry my eyes out, and in a matter of minutes I had 12 people crying their eyes out with me. And then I went home, and then I said to my wife that I'd been to a prayer meeting. She found it very difficult to believe. But the fact that I was home at 10 o'clock instead of the usual 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning somehow convinced her. And then the next evening we went off, and as I thought, to a Baptist church, because my wife was a very devout Baptist. But she suddenly stopped. She said, don't let's go to the Baptist church. Let's go to this little mission. We were passing it to get to the Northcote Road Baptist Church in Battersea. And of course I wanted to go into that mission anyway, because that was the place I'd been the night before, and indeed that morning. And so we went in. And I forgot that I was a gentleman. I went through the doors before my wife. And this little man, Mr. Ching, he greeted me as I passed inside. And then I heard him greet my wife as he said, hello, Mrs. Lewis. Then somebody else said, hello, Mrs. Lewis. And I don't know how many people. So when we got to our seats, and after we said a little prayer, I turned to her and I said, you seem to be well known here. She said, yes, she said, I belong here. And I don't know why, but last night I didn't go to the prayer meeting. But there's a prayer meeting held here, she said, every Saturday night. And for the past 4.5 years, these people upstairs have been praying for you and for your return to the Lord. And when she told me that, I started to cry again. And she said, don't cry. Well, I said, you didn't ask me where I went to last night. I'll tell you now. I went to that prayer meeting upstairs. The subject of 4.5 years of prayer walked into their midst, and they didn't know it.
So the sovereign work of God was pursuing you gently to the place where he wanted to use you.
Yes.
The next chapter in the Myrddin Lewis Memorial Series continues tomorrow at the same time.
The Hour of Revival Association radio service presenting Revive Your Hearts with Eric Hutchins for Thursday, 11th of December.
Well, we're looking at another chapter in the Myrddin Lewis Memorial Series. Myrddin went to be with the Lord quite recently, but 2 years before the present date, he came to our studios and shared with us memories of a long life serving the Lord. Today we pick up a chapter about the way the Lord led him into serving him. I'm not going to ask you questions which many of our listeners would know about, how the Lord used you in your church at Birmingham, in evangelism here and there, but I do want to remind many of the wonderful times we had in the city of Manchester in the 1946 and 8 period. I recall that you were our first ever soloist in a Bellevue rally.
That's right.
And right before us on the desk is the picture of the Bellevue Boxing Stadium with 7,500 people. We know there were 7,500 because it's at a shilling each, and we got 7,500 shillings.
Yes.
We had to sell them to get them into Bellevue. And you came up from Birmingham at that time, and what did you sing on that occasion? Stephen Alford was the speaker, you may recall.
That's right. If I remember rightly now, I sang...
was it something to the tune of Finlandia?
Teach me thy way, O Lord, teach me thy way.
Oh, yes, that
thy
was it.
gracious aid. And if you'll allow me, Eric, I recall that the people, the rough and tumble kind of people that came in with their caps on and smoking their cigarettes and so on and so on.
Yes.
And then I got up to sing this so simple little gospel song, and the peace that came down on that vast audience.
I remember it
was wonderful.
Do you remember how many came forward that night?
Yes, I do. There were 250 people came forward and accepted Christ that night.
That was tremendous. The next Bellevue rally, Billy Graham spoke at, you may remember.
Yes.
Now, but also you came up to Manchester to sing for us when we had the privilege of having our rally on the BBC.
Yes.
I think that was about 1946 or 7.
Round about that time.
What did you sing then, Myrddin?
I sang Finlandia. to the words, be still my soul, the Lord is on thy side. And an amazing thing happened. I had a letter. In fact, I had quite a pile of letters from people who had heard me singing rather. But one in particular from a very illiterate woman by the way she wrote and the way she spelled her words. But the essence of the letter was this, that she had filled her gas meter that night to commit her suicide. And she wrote and told me her husband was a sick man, she had a large family. She had got to the place where she couldn't stand another day. And she had actually filled her meter with the pennies, waiting for the last boy to come home to go to bed. And she had her pillows all ready to put in the oven and put her head in the oven and just pass out. And for some reason, I never had done it before, I turned on the wireless. And when I turned it on, your voice came through, sir, and you told me, be still, my soul. The Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief and pain. Leave to your God to order and provide. In every change ye faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways, leads to a joyful end. And then she said this, thank you, sir. You saved me from being a suicide.
Praise the Lord. What memories flood into my mind as we go back to those great rallies in the city of Manchester in the late 1940s, with Myrddin Lewis singing over the BBC and to the great crowds in Bellevue. But tomorrow morning we shall be going even earlier into his life, and at the age of 6 he has memories of the great Welsh revival. Be sure to tune in tomorrow at the same time.
This is the Hour of Revival Association radio service presenting Revive Your Hearts with Eric Hutchins for Friday, December the 12th.
Continuing the series with Myrddin Lewis in this special Myrddin Lewis Memorial Week. Many know now that he went home to be with the Lord recently. We've been asking him to turn over the chapters of his life, but this morning we asked him to turn over right to the very first chapter he could ever remember, the Welsh revival.
Yes, that is a long time ago. I was 6-year-old.
Who took you?
My parents.
Where did they take you?
They took me to the church in which I was born, in the Rhondda Valley, the Welsh Presbyterian Church by the name of Pennywell. And Evan Roberts was due to come, the revivalist himself, was due there that night at 7 o'clock. We got into the church, I think, somewhere between 5 and 6 o'clock and managed to get our seats. By the time Evan Roberts got there, the place was packed. He only had enough room to stand in the pulpit. And promptly at 7 o'clock, he addressed his congregation in Welsh. He said, Gweddiwn, which means, let us pray, let us pray. And immediately, over 1,000 people began to pray. They all prayed together. Colliers, most of them, in fact, all of them were mine.
All out loud together.
Out loud.
Oh, wouldn't that be boisterous and noisy and indecent and not worshipful, don't you think?
No. They just prayed and they wept and they cried.
Well, I don't think that, but that's what I get told in England when I come back with stories of revival meetings in the States.
I was only 6-year-old, but I remember the awe that struck my heart when I saw those men on their knees weeping before God. Evan Roberts left that meeting at 10 o'clock that night and went to the home where he was staying. The woman of that home was a friend of my mother's. The next morning she was down in my mother's telling her that Evan Roberts came in. He refused to have even a cup of tea before he went up to his room. And he was no sooner in his room than he started to pray. She said, I never went to bed all night. I just listened to that man groaning and groaning on his knees upstairs, and every now and again bursting out in prayer. And that's how it went on. Well, my mother listened to that. However, we came out of that meeting that we had gone into the night before at 6 o'clock. We came out of it at 4 o'clock in the morning.
In the morning?
In the morning.
That's quite a long session for a boy of 6.
It was indeed. Well, I slept some of the times, but I was also very wide awake most of the times because you just couldn't go to sleep, really. Yeah. And then my father had just a couple of hours rest, and then my mother put us kids to bed. He went off to the mine. He came back again around about 3:30 in the afternoon. We all got washed and changed. He got washed and changed, took his meal. All we kids were ready, and off we tripped. And we went back, Eric, into the same meeting that began the night before.
Still going?
It was still going, and frankly, I don't even know to this day when that meeting actually ended.
That was longer than the continuous performances of your showbiz days.
It sure was.
Well, now, did you ever remember any of the other leaders of the revival? Did you ever have any memories of Seth Joshua?
I knew Seth Joshua, and Seth Joshua was a very great friend of my father's. And when I was out in the United States, I visited Peter, his son, when he was in Hollywood, yes.
What's your outstanding recollection of Seth Joshua spiritually as a revival leader?
One of the outstanding men that we had in the revival. And the work, the forward movement work in Wales, which was an outside branch, the English branch of the Welsh Presbyterian Church, Seth Joshua had more to do with that than anyone. And his church in Neath today stands as a monument to the memory of Seth Joshua.
Is that right?
He was a remarkable man.
The final episode in the Myrddin Lewis Memorial CDs will be tomorrow morning.